Welcome back to the Federalist Paper Series, Freedom Family. And Patriots, what if I told you that some of the most dangerous expansions of federal power didn't come from bold, obvious power grabs, but from shared authority? Because that's the real fight inside Federalist number 32. Hopefully, if you watched the previous 31, if you haven't, please catch up. It's a way that I hope we as a community can use to educate our youth and other Americans who know nothing about what the founders actually thought about and why they created what they did. Because the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers, to be followed, to be coming soon after this series, gives us the look into their hearts and souls. And in this one, Hamilton is explaining when the federal government's powers are exclusive, when they're concurrent, meaning shared with the states, and when states are blocked because federal law occupies the field. And if you care about the Second Amendment, you should care about this paper, because gun control grows in the gray area between shared power, necessary and proper, and supremacy. So today we're going to break down Federalist 32 in plain English with examples, and then I'll connect it directly to the modern Second Amendment battlefield, how Washington claims authority, how states push back, and how you get caught in the crossfire. If you want more founding era truth tied to today's Second Amendment fights, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and share this with at least 5 patriots who need it. Federalist 32 is part of Hamilton's long explanation of taxation and federal revenue, and he's answering a fear from the anti-federalists. If the federal government can tax, won't it crush the states and become supreme in everything? Hamilton's response is basically not automatically. Some powers the federal government has are exclusive, but many are concurrent, like states can still act too, unless the Constitution makes it exclusive by its nature. So the entire paper is a lesson in how to tell if federal power blocks state power. And that matters because modern gun policy constantly turns into, can the state do this? Can the federal government do that? If both can act, whose rule wins? And what happens when federal agencies start improvising? And Federalist 32 is Hamilton laying down his framework. He says state authority is only fully cut off in 3 main situations. There's category A. The Constitution gives the power to the Union in express exclusive terms, meaning the Constitution literally says it's exclusive, or it clearly implies exclusivity in the text. An example that's easy to understand: certain foreign affairs or treaty-type functions. If the Constitution reserves it specifically to the federal level, states don't get to run a parallel system. And then there's category B. The Constitution grants a federal power and grants a similar power to the states, but says states can't use it. This is like the Constitution gives Congress a power and then explicitly restricts states from doing the same thing. In other words, you can't pretend it's shared if the Constitution directly forbids states from acting in that area. And then category C. The federal power is granted in a way that would be absolutely and totally contradictory if states could also do it. And this one's huge. Hamilton says, even if the Constitution doesn't explicitly say exclusive, some powers are exclusive by nature, because if states could also do it, the results would clash, collide, and become impossible. So Hamilton's test is basically, if the Constitution says it's exclusive, well, then it's exclusive. If the Constitution forbids states from doing it, it's exclusive. And if state action would contradict the federal grant, it's exclusive. Otherwise, it's likely concurrent. And concurrent power means both the federal government and the states may act in the same general area. Hamilton's key example here is taxation. He's arguing the federal power to tax does not automatically destroy state taxing power. Well, why? Because states already had that power, and there's no direct constitutional clause saying they lose it, except in certain areas like duties and imports, where the Constitution puts limits on states. Hamilton's pitch is this: the states remain meaningful political societies, able to function, collect revenue, govern local matters, while the federal government has a set of enumerated powers to handle national issues. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. If powers are concurrent, conflicts can arise. And Hamilton's implicit fix is what every Federalist leans to. When there is a conflict between valid federal law and state law, federal law wins because of the Supremacy Clause. So concurrent power isn't peaceful sharing, it's both can act until they collide. And when they collide, whoever has the superior authority in that domain prevails. And that collision is where we live today. Hamilton is calming fears, saying the states won't be annihilated. But let's be blunt here. Even if a power is shared, the federal government often ends up dominating because Congress can legislate broadly, federal agencies interpret, regulate, and enforce. Federal courts tend to give the federal government deference in many technical areas, even though Chevron deference is dead. And when conflict arises, Supremacy Clause arguments get deployed like a hammer. That is the modern playbook. And while Federalist 32 is about taxation, the logic is the same logic used in arguments about firearms policy, commerce, federal criminal law, import-export rules, federal licensing, interstate transfers, and all of the administrative framework built around them. Now, here's the key point that I want you to remember. Hamilton's framework assumes the federal government stays inside its enumerated powers. But what happens when enumerated becomes interpreted so broadly that it swallows the rule? And that's where the fight gets dangerous. Because once you accept the idea that the federal government can reach almost anything through broad readings of commerce and necessary and proper and general welfare style arguments, well then concurrent stops being a boundary and starts being a pipeline for central power. And the Second Amendment world has lived that reality for generations. Federalist 32 gives us a mental model for today's Second Amendment conflicts. Tie-in number 1. Exclusive federal power claims show up in gun control all the time. You'll hear arguments like only the federal government can regulate X, or states are preempted from Y, or federal law occupies the field. And sometimes preemption is real because Congress wrote it that way. Other times it's weaponized as a narrative. Don't resist, it's federal. And Hamilton's categories help us ask the right question. Did the Constitution actually grant exclusivity here? Did it forbid state action? Would state action truly contradict the federal grant? If the answer is no, then states still have authority in their sphere. Tie-in 2 is concurrent power. It creates conflict, and conflict is where rights get squeezed. When both levels can act, they can also stack restrictions. This is how people end up trapped under federal rules and state bans and local enforcement culture and bureaucratic interpretations. And even if each layer claims it's just doing its part, the combined effect can be a rights chokehold. So Hamilton's telling us that shared power exists, but the founders also expected rights to be protected because rights are not supposed to be a privileged issue by whichever level of government wins in the jurisdiction fight. And then tie-in 3, supremacy. It gets abused when agencies act like lawmakers. And here's where everybody should lean in here. Federalist 32 assumes federal supremacy applies to law, meaning legitimate constitutional law. But modern America has a major problem. Regulation by agency, ATF. And when agency stretches definitions, it changes enforcement priorities, or it reinterprets a rule that affects a constitutional right, well, people experience that as supremacy, even though it may not be legitimate lawmaking. And from a Second Amendment perspective, this is one of the most dangerous backdoors there is. Not a voted law, not a constitutional amendment, just a shift in interpretation because they just think so. And that becomes the new reality. Well, Hamilton's framework wasn't designed to justify bureaucratic supremacy. It's about constitutional allocation of power. And then tie-in 4, federalism. It's supposed to be a protection for liberty, not a machine for restrictions. And here's the founding era logic that folks need to understand. Federalism, which is state plus federal layers, was meant to divide power so no single authority could easily dominate. So when we see federal and state overlap used to multiply restrictions rather than protect rights, that is a warning sign that the structure is being used backwards. A right like the Second Amendment is not supposed to depend on what state you live in, which administration's in power, or which agency is redefining terms this year. The Bill of Rights is supposed to be a barrier, and when you hear the federal government has authority, ask yourself, is this an enumerated power? If so, which one? Is it exclusive? Did the Constitution say so? Did it forbid states? Or did it make state action contradictory? And then 3, if it is concurrent, where is the collision point? And 4, is the rule actually a law passed by Congress or an agency interpretation? 5, even if a policy claim is jurisdictionally valid, does it violate a constitutional right? Because jurisdiction doesn't cancel rights. Hamilton's goal was to reassure Americans that a stronger union would not erase the states. But for us today, Federalist 32 is a reminder of something much bigger. Power expands most effectively in the gray areas. Concurrent authority can be healthy if it's bounded by the Constitution and used to protect liberty. But it becomes dangerous when enumerated powers become elastic and supremacy becomes a slogan and agencies behave like legislatures. And that's exactly why the Second Amendment community pays attention to structure, not just the headlines. Because once the structure breaks, rights become negotiable. Patriots, guys and gals, if you got value out of this breakdown of Federalist 32 and you want Federalist 33 next, because that one gets into necessary and proper and supremacy in a way that hits modern gun politics like a freight train, drop a comment, say do Federalist 33. Thank you to Blackout Coffee for supporting this effort to re-educate America in what really matters when it comes to our foundational rights. Head over to blackoutcoffee.com/GNG, buy some coffee, support a pro-constitutional company that is supporting the Second Amendment as well. And hit subscribe, share this, and as always, stay vigilant, stay armed, and stay free. I'll see you on the next one, y'all. Take care.